A scientist works tirelessly in a futuristic lab. She pores over documents, meticulously conducting experiments, finally completing her thesis on tumor inhibitors. At her graduation ceremony, she stands alone on stage. Suddenly, her sister appears before the crowd. Holding an identical thesis, the sister's eyes fill with tears as she accuses the scientist of plagiarism. The crowd begins to murmur and point. The scientist stares in disbelief. Her father storms forward, his face twisted in rage. He points a finger at her, shouting in fury. The scientist pleads with him, tears streaming down her face. She turns to her fiancé for help, but he pulls out his phone, showing her proof of the sister's publication, his face cold with disappointment. The crowd turns into a mob, jeering and calling her a fraud. The father, utterly humiliated, grabs his daughter and shoves her violently to the ground. She hits the floor hard, blood trickling from her temple. The crowd swarms her, kicking and beating her as she lies helpless. Her sister watches with a triumphant smirk. The scientist's vision fades, images of the betrayal flashing through her mind as a clock spins backward. She gasps, waking up in her seat at the ceremony. Just moments before the accusation, she touches her face, realizing she's been given a second chance. The scientist stands at the podium, beginning her presentation, but her sister suddenly leaps from her seat, pointing and shouting, accusing her of plagiarism. The crowd gasps. The scientist, however, remains calm. She steps down from the podium, walking directly toward her sister. The sister repeats her accusations, her voice filled with fake emotion. The scientist coolly stares her down, then turns to the audience, confidently listing her achievements. The sister holds up her own thesis, claiming it was published a day earlier. Tome. The crowd begins to whisper amongst themselves. The fiancé stands up, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. The father rises from his seat, his eyes blazing with fury. He orders his daughter off the stage, but she refuses to move. Instead, she challenges her sister's story, pointing out that she has been in the lab day and night, with many witnesses. An older professor stands up, suggesting a live challenge to settle the dispute. A pair of sick twins need treatment. Whoever can cure them is the true author. The sister smirks confidently and agrees. The scientist also agrees, a determined smile on her face. The two sisters face each other. The challenge set. After the graduation ceremony, the father praises the sister while scolding the scientist for being arrogant. The scientist flashes back to her past life, betrayed and beaten, a fire of vengeance in her eyes. The sister approaches with a fake smile, but the scientist ignores her. The fiancé and father rush to the sister's side, accusing the scientist of being cruel. The scientist retorts that she should have never returned to this family. The sister feigns innocence, offering her cheek for a slap. The scientist obliges, striking her hard across the face. The crowd gasps. The fiancé and father are enraged. They berate her for her violence. The scientist unleashes a torrent of pent-up anger, revealing years of neglect and mistreatment. The father, furious, raises his hand to strike her, but she catches his wrist, her eyes blazing with defiance. She declares that she owes this family nothing, and that she is severing all ties with them. With a final glare, she renounces her award, leaving it for her sister, and walks away. The sister tries to stop her, feigning concern, but the scientist pushes past. A man in a suit intervenes, telling everyone to calm down. The father storms off in a rage. As the scientist is called to the stage, she walks past her stunned family, a look of grim determination on her face. The sister watches from her seat. On stage, the two sisters begin their surgeries. Working in identical tents, the crowd watches on the big screens, amazed at their identical techniques. Every cut, every movement is perfectly synchronized. The onlookers are stunned, convinced they are witnessing a clone. The scientist is baffled. Her sister is using a unique technique that she developed in secret. The sister smirks from across the stage, revealing that she stole the scientist's research. The fiancé and father are convinced the scientist is a fraud. The crowd erupts in anger, shouting and throwing things at the stage. The scientist freezes, her hands trembling, the weight of the false accusations crushing her spirit. She feels the same despair as in her past life, trapped in a nightmare she can't escape. The crowd murmurs. Discussing the rare and difficult surgery, a professor announces the start of the challenge. The sisters bow and enter their sterile tents. The scientist's assistant expresses her concern about the noisy crowd, but the scientist remains focused, remembering her mother's words about staying calm under pressure. She begins the procedure with steady hands, her movements precise and confident. The professors in the audience are impressed, praising her skill and composure. The father watches with a flicker of hope. The sister, however, is also performing flawlessly, using a new advanced technique. The crowd is amazed. The scientist's hands are steady. The scene fades as she continues to operate, the weight of her sister's deception heavy in the air. As the surgery continues, the scientist realizes her sister is using a suturing technique taught to her in secret by their mother. A technique the sister couldn't possibly know. The sister taunts her, asking what method she's using. The scientist begins to suture, her movements fluid and precise. The professors are astounded by her innovative technique, which minimizes scarring and reduces the risk of infection. They praise her as a true surgical genius. The father and fiancé watch in stunned silence, their previous convictions shaken. The sister finishes her surgery first, declaring victory. The crowd turns against the scientist, calling her a disgrace. The scientist's assistant rushes to her side, but she remains frozen. The patient's vitals begin to drop. The scientist snaps out of her despair. Remembering her duty as a doctor, she grabs a pair of scissors. A new plan forming in her mind, she announces that she has also finished, but has accidentally left a gauze pad inside the patient. The sister panics, her face pale with fear. The scientist calms herself. Remembering her mother's advice to stay composed, she recalls the years of betrayal, her fiancé siding with her sister, the stolen research, the false accusations. It all clicks into place. They must have been working together all along. She remembers another technique, one her mother created and taught only to her, a secret weapon. She begins to use it. The sister, not to be outdone, announces she will use her own self-created technique, which is, of course, the exact same one. The crowd is shocked. The father explodes with rage, demanding the scientist resume the surgery immediately. He accuses her of being reckless, a disgrace to the family name. The crowd joins in, their jeers and insults raining down on her. The scientist's assistant pleads with her to do something as the patient's blood pressure drops, but the scientist ignores them all and begins to do stretching exercises. The crowd is in an uproar. The fiancé leaps to his feet, screaming at her to stop. The sister, panicked and unsure of what to do, watches as the anesthesia time ticks away. She knows she can't replicate the complex suturing technique, but abandoning the patient would mean ruin. Just as she's about to give up, she stumbles, dizzy and disoriented, and collapses to the floor, unconscious. The scientist's announcement sends the crowd into a frenzy. They can't believe her carelessness. The sister feigns shock and concern, demanding to know why she wasn't told sooner. The scientist coolly replies that her mistakes are her own business. The sister, seeing an opportunity, declares that she will perform a second surgery to fix her sister's mistake. The professors are confused. This is highly irregular. The fiancé begs her not to, but she is determined to play the hero. She takes a deep breath, preparing to re-enter the surgical field. The scientist, meanwhile, calmly removes her gloves and begins to do a series of stretches. The sister freezes, completely baffled by this bizarre behavior. With both patients now on the operating table, the crowd and professors watch in stunned silence. They can't believe that both sisters are using the exact same highly advanced surgical technique. The scientist is devastated, realizing that she is trapped in a loop of betrayal. No matter what she does, her sister will always find a way to steal her work. The crowd turns on her, convinced she is a fraud. The fiancé and father join in, their accusations echoing the nightmare of her past life. The sister feigns innocence, offering to give up all her research if it will appease the scientist, begging for forgiveness. The scientist pushes her away, her heart filled with a cold fury. The fiancé rushes to the sister's side, shouting at the scientist for her cruelty. The crowd erupts, demanding that the scientist be expelled. The memories of her past life, the beating, the humiliation, the final betrayal all come flooding back. She stares at the faces of her accusers as she realizes that her fate is sealed once again. The fiancé rushes to the sister's side, calling her name. The crowd murmurs with concern, convinced she collapsed from exhaustion. The fiancé turns on the scientist, blaming her for the sister's condition. The crowd joins in, their anger and accusations escalating. The scientist ignores them, her focus entirely on the patient. She puts on a fresh pair of gloves and begins to suture, her hands moving with a speed and precision that leaves everyone speechless. The professors watch in awe as she works, her technique flawless. In a matter of minutes, the surgery is complete. The scientist smiles. Just then, the sister announces that her surgery is also complete. The crowd erupts in applause. The sister explains that she was merely suffering from low blood sugar. She then proudly presents her own newly developed suturing technique, inviting the professors to inspect her work. The professors, along with the father and fiancé, enter the sterile tent. Their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. They examine the patient, their eyes widening in disbelief. The sister's suturing is perfect, a mirror image of the scientist's. The professors are baffled, unable to explain how two people could have independently developed such a revolutionary technique. The father beams with pride, convinced of his adopted daughter's genius. The sister then turns to the scientist, a smug smile on her face, and asks to see her work. The scientist's heart sinks as she pulls back the sheet. The crowd gasps, the professors stare in shock. The fiancé berates the scientist, accusing her of being jealous and petty. The scientist fires back, listing all the times he has ignored her in favor of her sister. From a simple pinprick to a major surgery, he dismisses her concerns, claiming her sister is frail and needs his protection. The scientist scoffs at his hypocrisy, revealing that he helped the sister recreate the stolen data. The sister, feigning remorse, begs the scientist to stop arguing. The fiancé, completely manipulated, tells the scientist he only admires her sister's purity. The father joins in, calling her ungrateful and cruel. The sister then kneels before the scientist, tears streaming down her face. She confesses that she is jealous of the scientist's relationship with the fiancé and promises to stay away from him if the scientist will just stop plagiarizing. The fiancé, his heart breaking, rushes to the sister's side, His love for her now undeniable, the scientist watches them, a single tear of betrayal rolling down her cheek, as she finally accepts the truth. The scientist confronts her sister, demanding to know how she learned their mother's secret technique. The sister plays dumb, turning the accusation back on the scientist. The fiancé defends the sister, praising her dedication and hard work. The scientist scoffs, reminding him that he is her fiancé, not her sister's. She recounts his constant neglect, his blatant favoritism, his utter disregard for her feelings. The crowd begins to murmur, their opinions shifting as they hear the truth. The fiancé tries to dismiss her accusations, but the scientist presses on, revealing how he helped her sister recreate the stolen data. The sister clings to his arm, feigning innocence, but the seeds of doubt have been planted. The scientist then turns to the crowd and directly accuses her fiancé of being her sister's accomplice, of leaking her research. The crowd gasps. The fiancé is stunned into silence, and the sister's eyes widen in panic. The fiancé, completely under her spell, compares the two sisters, praising the sister's gentle nature while condemning the scientist's ambition. The scientist, who has been kneeling on the floor, suddenly begins to laugh. She rises to her feet, a strange smile on her face, and announces that she is breaking off her engagement. The fiancé is stunned, but the scientist is resolute. The father, enraged by her defiance, slaps her hard across the face. He berates her for her insolence, reminding her of all the family has given her. But the scientist is unmoved. She tells him that she is no longer his daughter, and that she is leaving the family for good. As she turns to walk away, a young man in a suit appears at the back of the hall, his eyes fixed on the scientist, a look of recognition and relief on his face. The sister collapses, but this time, it's the scientist who falls. The fiancé and father rush to the sister's side. Ignoring the scientist completely, they fuss over her, convinced she's the victim. The fiancé turns on the scientist, his voice dripping with contempt. He accuses her of causing her sister's collapse, of being a heartless monster. The crowd joins in, their voice is a chorus of condemnation. They call her a disgrace to the medical profession, a danger to society. The scientist, kneeling on the floor, clutches her chest in pain. He is breaking off his engagement to the scientist and will marry her sister instead. The scientist can only watch in stunned silence as her world crumbles around her.